You just received your Handle It Model 600 strut trapper. I know you're excited to start using it, but before you do that, there's a few things we have to do. First of all, as you can see, it arrives in this big, massive box. So as you look at the box, you want to check it over, make sure there's not any big dents or gashes in it. Also, if the box is not there and is just on a pallet, that might be an indication that there could be some freight damage. So walk around, check out the box, make sure everything's good. Another thing I want to note is that sometimes you may receive the unit fully assembled. If you do, that's okay, because sometimes we ship it fully assembled on short destinations or if there's multiple units. So don't worry if it's fully assembled and there's no box, that would be intentional. As I mentioned, everything looks good here, so I think we're good to go to open up the box and then inspect further. So at this point, you could sign the freight paperwork and let the driver go. We open the box. Now we want to do a quick scan of the unit and check some components to make sure there's no damage to them. So as you start at the top, you can see here, we have the fan cover. Just make sure it's not dented in or anything like that. Then going down, we have a limit switch here. Everything looks good there. Next thing we have is the turntable. You want to look over for any major gouges or anything like that. If there's just minor cosmetic damage, it's really not a big deal. Just call us up, we can get you touch-up paint for that. No reason to refuse it for any light damage to the turntable. Moving down, we have the photo eye right here, and we have the full carriage. So we have the rollers here. We want to check and make sure everything is good there. And then we have another limit switch at the bottom, and everything is looking good there. As you can see, everything looks great. So the next thing we're going to want to do is remove all the packaging. Once we do that, we're going to take the unit off of the pallet and set it in place, and then we can tip up the mast and secure that. Now that we have the unit off of the pallet, we're going to want to tip this mast up and secure it to the unit. In order to do that, we want to find the bolts, which are typically going to be in this manual, which we have here. You'll need an 8 and a 6 millimeter Allen wrench in order to do that. Before we tip the mast up, we want to make sure we remove this strap. So now we're ready to tip the mast up. So I'm going to have Cody do that. And as he does that, I'm going to want to watch this cable and make sure it doesn't get pinched. So I'm watching this here, make sure it's feeding through. Everything's good. And now that it's up, we're going to make sure that the holes are aligned. The holes aren't always going to want to line up perfectly because this mast is on a hinge. So what you're going to want to do is go and loosen up these bolts on the hinge. Now that we have the hinge loosened up, we can have Cody move the mast in place so we can line up the holes correctly. Just over this field. Perfect. Now we're lined up and we can put these in. Once you have those bolts secure, don't forget to tighten up the hinge bolts again. Now that we have the unit in place, we want to get power to the unit. The good news is that it only takes a 110 plug-in. However, you want to make sure that you're close enough to an outlet so you don't have to use an extension cord to reach it. Because you don't want to use extension cords, you also want to have a dedicated outlet, which also preferably a dedicated circuit. On top of that, you do not want to use GFI outlets because they will trip the breaker. Also, this unit does have anchoring points here and here. So if you want to anchor the unit down, you can do in those places. Now we're going to plug it in. Now that we have the unit plugged in, we can power it up by hitting this green button. Whenever you turn it on, it's going to ask for a reset. So we just hit reset here. And what that would do would bring the turntable to the home position and the carriage down. Now, they're probably in the home position already, so nothing happened, but it did beep back at you to let you know that it did reset. Before we go any further, I want to point out a few sensors and things on this unit. So what I want to do is bring this carriage up to chest level. So just quickly, I'm going to go over to manual mode, and I'll show you more how to do this later. But I'm going to raise the carriage up to about chest height so I can show you some sensors on that. So the first thing I want to point out is the safety pan here. The first thing that people want to do when they see this is loose, naturally they want to tighten it. This is intended to be loose. So notice how if I put this up, it triggers this sensor. And that what would happen is you would get an error code on the board saying SIC. basically it thinks that it's crushing something. So you want to keep this loose. Also, sometimes what happens is this might get dented or, like this, and it is triggering this, and you have that code. So you want to just make sure that everything is clear here and that it's good to go. The next thing I want to point out is this upper limit switch right here. So what that's there for is as the carriage travels up, it lets it know like, hey, you're too high and you have to stop. So if that's busted off or something, it will go too high and you will get an error message and it might get stuck. At the bottom, we have the same limit switch. The next thing I want to do is show you the photo eye. As you can see here, it's in a green status. If there were a pallet in front of it, it would change to orange. So as that pallet's in front of it, it's going to stay there. And when it gets to the top of the pallet, it's not going to see it anymore, so it's going to go green. That's going to tell the machine it's at the top and it needs to go back down. The last thing I want to point out is this strap right here. As you can see, it's nice and tight and everything's been working fine. If for some reason it was loose and it fell out of here, we would have to reattach it. And we have another video that shows you how to do that. So we received the unit, we've inspected it, we put it in place, we powered it up, we went through some of the basics of the sensors that are on this unit. Next, I want to show you how to load the film. And then from there, we have a lot more videos to show you on how you can use all the functions of your Handle It Model 600.